Alright, last section of this chapter is dealing with the second half of 1.6, which is graphing or solving absolute value inequalities. Today is going to focus mostly on the translation. We've learned how to solve and graph them already, so it's important that we can actually expand them, and then that will actually wrap everything up together. The rules for expansion, if you remember, with absolute values, the first thing we used to have to do is get the absolute value alone, which does not change. We're still going to write the problem without bars. But the difference here is that we have to actually have to connect them using the proper word, which we'll talk about that in a second. And then there's a fourth step where you have to rewrite them, making necessary switches, which again we'll discuss. And again, these two are really the whole point of this message or this lesson. If you dealt with absolute value equalities and you know how to get the absolute value alone, and you know how to rewrite the problem without the bars, that is fine, and you know how to do all the other stuff. But it's going to be steps 3 and 4 that we focus on. So how do you find the proper word? Well, the absolute value symbol is used to indicate the word that will be used in the problem. Just remember the following observation. If you were to alphabetize the words and or, that means and starts with the A, O starts with the O, and would be here, or would be here. If you notice, this symbol points to and. If you notice, this symbol points to or. And so that's how you can kind of use it. But again, you have to kind of have that skill, or that at least that observation in your memory whenever you do it. So again, these two symbols point to or because they point to the right. These two symbols point to and because they point to the left. Second part of what we got to focus on is how do I make the necessary switches. The thing about it is you've actually switched everything outside, but the only difference is that the equal sign stays the same, because when you flip this sign over and turn it, it looks like that, which is where the flip comes from. But when you flip this sign over and turn it, it looks like that. And so you might have actually switched the equal sign, you just don't notice because the equal sign doesn't change. So you did switch everything on the outside. You just got to remember that when you switch the opposite, that you actually rewrite the sign also. So solving and graphing, again, is going to be the same. Solving is going to be the same. Translation is going to have just a slight change on this and the word. So what we do here is we do what we were taught to do the first time, which is we write 3x plus 2 less than or equal to 12. This, to me, points towards that side, which would be and 3x plus 2 greater than or equal to negative 12. So that is where you, once you can get that, I think everything will be fine. Alright. So therefore, from there we go minus 2, 3x less than or equal to 10. We divide by 3. X is less than or equal to 10/3. Over here, we subtract 2, 3x greater than or equal to negative 14. Divide. And you get those two numbers. Now, if you remember from our graphs, what I told you about in the graphs, and it seemed like it was kind of useless information, but the and graph, if you remember, I said looks like it usually shades in the middle, which is typically going to happen here. And what we have here is we got to have the smaller number on the left side, so negative 14/3 over here, bigger number on the right side, so 10/3 over here. Notice how 10/3 is going to be closed going this way. Notice how 14/3 is going to be closed and going, it's not equals, I don't know why I did that, but it's going to be closed and going that way. So again, this is pointing to the right of 14/3, to the left of 10/3. So having that understanding of how and or usually works at least gives you an idea. And even on multiple choice questions, if you understand that it's the and equation, you can kind of know what you're looking for, and that should take care of it. Alright. One more example before we go to our homework for the day. Again, I just want to give you more practice than anything else, get you the main information and give you time to practice. Absolute value 10 minus 2x is greater than 4. So what we're looking at now is, again, write it without the bars. So 10 minus 2x greater than 4. This is now pointing that way, which means I use the word or. 10 minus 2x is less than negative 4. Again, that switch is the most important part. Write it without the bars, get the proper word, the left side without the bars, switch the sign, and switch the number. And again, solve as usual. So minus 10, minus 10. Negative 2x is greater than negative 6. Again, I don't like to divide by negatives. If you do that, that's fine. Just make sure you remember to switch it. But what I like to do is switch it here. That way I don't have to worry about it. Then I divide by 2, getting x is less than 3. Here, subtract 10, subtract 10. Negative 2x is less than negative 14. Again, what I like to do here to be careful is to switch everything. Divide by 2, and x is greater than 7. Again, if you remember, or I said usually shades the outside. Let's just kind of keep that in mind as we do it. It doesn't always do it, but it usually does. 3 goes on this side, 7 goes on this side. 3, as you notice, is open and going to the left. 7, as you notice, is open and going to the right. And so again, you kind of have an idea based off of what we knew was going on, and that'll help us out. So with this being the last section, keep in mind what you want to focus on now is catching up on your homework, getting to the practice problems so that you can master your skill, and then just making sure you ask whatever questions you need to ask. We have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday because you're off Monday, but you have Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to get some practice and master this skill with the test Friday. There's honestly no excuse not to do well on the test Friday when I'm giving you 3 processing days to kind of focus on your weaknesses. So don't spend so much time after you get your homework done. Don't spend so much time doing things you like to do. Make sure next week is all about finding things you don't like to do and getting them under control. All right? So good luck.